By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The minister's voice echoed through the grand cathedral as gasps rippled through the crowd of wealthy guests. There she stood, a young black woman in a simple white dress. Next to her, a handsome man in an expensive suit, tears streaming down his face. The shocked whispers were deafening. "Who is she? How did this happen?" But here's what will blow your mind. 2 months ago, nobody in that church would have believed this moment was possible. This is the story of how one simple meal changed everything, and I guarantee you've never heard anything like it before. Meet Keisha Williams, 22 years old, carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Every morning at 5 a.m., she'd wake up in her cramped studio apartment where the heating barely worked. Double shifts at Murphy's Diner, serving coffee to truckers for tips that barely covered rent. Her hands permanently stained with grease, but every penny went into an envelope marked Grandma Rose, because the woman who raised her was fighting cancer. Grandma Rose had taught her that cooking wasn't just about food. "Baby, when you cook with love, people can taste it. That's magic they can't teach in any fancy school." Keisha dreamed of opening Rose's Kitchen someday, but dreams don't pay medical bills. Across town, Marcus Chen Morrison was fighting his own battles. 28, devastatingly handsome, vice president of Morrison Industries worth billions. From the outside, he had everything: penthouse, luxury cars, exclusive invitations. But Marcus was drowning under family pressure. His father Richard expected ruthless perfection in everything. The only light in Marcus's world was his 8-year-old adopted sister, Lily. But lately, she hadn't been smiling. She'd been getting thinner and thinner, and it was killing him. Lily Chen Morrison was just 8, but she'd lived through more trauma than most adults. Foster care had left invisible scars. Food had been scarce in those homes, and she'd gone to bed hungry more nights than any child should. Even with the Morrison family giving her everything, she couldn't shake the fear it would all disappear. She hoarded snacks, ate tiny portions, trusted no one. Richard had hired the best nannies money could buy. They lasted weeks before quitting. Child psychologists, nutritionists, specialists charging thousands per hour. Nothing worked. Lily would sit at the massive dining table, surrounded by gourmet meals, and barely touch a bite. The latest nanny quit that morning. "I've been caring for children for 30 years, but she's just unreachable." The doctor's words haunted Richard. "If we don't see improvement soon, we may need hospitalization." Marcus was at his breaking point. That's how he found himself at 2 a.m. on a rainy night, driving aimlessly because he couldn't bear seeing Lily's untouched dinner plate. Exhausted and desperate, he spotted Murphy's Diner, flickering in the darkness. The bell chimed as he walked in, and that's when he saw her. Keisha moved with impossible grace after 16 hours on her feet. She wasn't just serving food, she was creating something beautiful. The way she arranged everything, her gentle smile for every customer. Marcus ordered coffee, needing an excuse to watch this woman work. When she set his plate down, their eyes met, and he felt something shift inside his chest. That's when he heard her talking about her grandmother's recipes, about how food could heal people in ways medicine couldn't. She talked about putting love into every meal, how cooking was the closest thing to magic. Like lightning hitting him, Marcus had an idea. What if Lily just needed someone who understood that food could be love, comfort, safety? His hands shaking, he approached the counter. "I know this sounds strange, but do you do any private cooking? Like for families?" Keisha looked up with those warm brown eyes, probably wondering why this well-dressed stranger was asking such an odd question at 2 a.m. But Marcus was past caring. His sister was dying slowly, and this woman might be the only person who could save her. If you're already hooked by this incredible love story, make sure you hit that subscribe button because this is just the beginning, and what happens next will completely blow your mind. But here's what I want to know. Have you ever met someone and instantly felt like they might change your entire life? Drop a comment below because what Marcus felt in that moment was about to turn his whole world upside down. Keisha's hands were trembling as the taxi pulled up to the Morrison estate. She'd seen mansions in movies, but this was something else entirely. Iron gates that probably cost more than her annual salary, a driveway that seemed to stretch for miles, and a house that looked more like a palace. For a moment, she almost told the driver to turn around. What was she doing here? She was just a diner waitress from the wrong side of town. But then she thought about the desperation in that man's voice at 2 a.m., and she stepped out of the taxi with her grandmother's old recipe box clutched in her hands. The front door was answered by a stern-faced woman in a crisp uniform who looked Keisha up and down like she was something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. "You must be the cook," she said, the word dripping with disdain. "Use the service entrance next time. Follow me." As Keisha walked through marble hallways lined with paintings worth more than her neighborhood, she heard the whispers from the staff. "What is she doing here? Did you see those shoes? I give her a week before she runs back where she came from." Each word was like a small cut, but Keisha held her head high. She wasn't here for them. She was here for a little girl who needed help. The kitchen was bigger than her entire apartment, filled with professional-grade equipment that gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Standing in the corner was the tiniest 8-year-old Keisha had ever seen. Lily Chen Morrison looked like a porcelain doll that might break if you breathed on her too hard. Her dark hair hung limp around her pale face, and her clothes seemed to swallow her tiny frame. "Lily, this is Miss Williams," Marcus said gently, his voice full of hope and fear. "She's going to make you something special to eat." Lily didn't even look up. She just stared at her hands folded in her lap, as still as a statue. Keisha's heart broke a little. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror when she was young and scared and hungry. This wasn't just about food. This was about trust, about safety, about a little girl who'd learned that the world wasn't a safe place. "What would you like me to make for you, sweetheart?" Keisha asked softly, kneeling down to Lily's level. The head chef, a pompous man with a French accent, interrupted. "I have prepared a gourmet salmon with organic vegetables and quinoa. It's nutritionally perfect." He presented the plate like it was a work of art, which it was, beautiful and expensive and completely untouched by human warmth. Lily glanced at it for half a second and turned away. Keisha watched this interaction and felt something click into place. All these people were trying to fix Lily with expensive solutions, complex nutrition, professional expertise. But sometimes the most broken hearts needed the simplest healing. "You know what?" Keisha said, rolling up her sleeves. "I think we need some real food in here." She opened her grandmother's recipe box and pulled out a card so old and worn you could barely read the faded handwriting. "My Grandma Rose used to make this for me when I was scared or sad or just needed to feel loved. It's nothing fancy, just a grilled cheese sandwich. But it's made with something all these gourmet meals are missing." "What's that?" Marcus asked, watching as Keisha heated butter in a simple pan. "Love," Keisha said simply. As she worked, she started talking. Not to anyone in particular, just sharing her story like Grandma Rose used to do. "You know, when I was about your age, Lily, I was scared all the time too. My parents had died, and I didn't know if I'd have enough to eat, or if anyone would take care of me. But Grandma Rose, she had this way of making everything better with just bread and cheese and butter." The kitchen had gone completely silent, except for the gentle sizzling of the sandwich. Even the snooty staff were listening. She'd tell me that every time she made this sandwich, she was putting a little piece of her heart inside it. And when I ate it, I wasn't just filling my stomach, I was filling that scared, empty place inside me with love. Keisha flipped the sandwich, golden brown and perfect. "Some people think love is just a feeling, but I think love is something you can actually taste." She cut the sandwich into small triangles and placed them on a simple white plate. No garnish, no artistic presentation, just comfort food at its most honest. She set it down in front of Lily and stepped back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Lily reached out with one tiny finger and touched the corner of a triangle. It was still warm, and Keisha saw something flicker in the little girl's eyes. Maybe curiosity, maybe hunger, maybe just the tiniest spark of hope. Lily picked up the triangle and took the smallest bite imaginable, then another, then another. Before anyone realized what was happening, she'd eaten an entire piece, then reached for another. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Richard, who'd been watching from the doorway, looked like he'd witnessed a miracle. The staff stood frozen in shock. Lily had just eaten more in 5 minutes than she had in the past week. It tastes like... Lily's voice was so soft, they had to strain to hear it. It tastes like being safe. That was the beginning of everything. Keisha started coming to the Morrison house every day, and slowly, meal by meal, Lily began to heal. Not just physically, though the weight gain was obvious to everyone. She was healing emotionally, learning to trust again, discovering that the world could sometimes be kind. Keisha would arrive each morning with her recipe box and her gentle stories, and Lily would help her cook. Simple things at first: stirring batter, measuring ingredients, learning that food could be fun instead of frightening. Keisha shared stories of her own childhood hunger, her fears, her dreams, and somehow those shared vulnerabilities created a bridge between them. "When I was little," Keisha would say while they made pancakes, "I used to save half my sandwich for later, just in case there wasn't any more food. Did you ever do that?" And Lily would nod, and for the first time in years, she wouldn't feel so alone with her fears. Marcus found himself drawn to these kitchen moments like a magnet. He'd make excuses to check on them, bringing coffee or asking about grocery lists, but really, he just wanted to be near this magic that was happening. Watching Keisha with Lily was like watching an artist work. She knew exactly when to push and when to pull back, when to challenge and when to comfort. And, if he was being honest with himself, it wasn't just Lily who was being healed. Something about Keisha's presence in their cold, perfect house was thawing parts of his heart he'd forgotten existed. She brought laughter into their kitchen, warmth into their conversations, and a kind of authentic joy that his privileged world had never offered. By the 3rd week, Lily had gained 4 pounds and started talking more. She'd tell Keisha about her dreams, her fears, her favorite colors. She'd even started eating meals with the family instead of hiding in her room. It was like watching a flower bloom after the longest winter. But just when everything seemed to be falling into place, the past came knocking. Victoria Ashworth stepped out of a chauffeur-driven Bentley like she owned the world. Which, in many ways, she did. Old money, perfect breeding, the kind of woman who'd been groomed since birth to marry someone exactly like Marcus. She was everything Keisha wasn't. Tall, blonde, educated at Swiss finishing schools, comfortable in the world of charity galas and country club memberships. "Darling," she called out to Marcus, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "I'm back from Milan, and I have the most amazing news about our engagement." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Victoria had been in Europe for 6 months, and honestly, he'd almost forgotten about their understanding. It had been an arrangement more than a romance. Their families had been planning this union since they were teenagers. Good for business, good for image, good for maintaining the social order that kept people like the Morrisons on top. Richard was thrilled, of course. "Victoria, darling, perfect timing. We need to discuss the wedding plans." He shot Marcus a meaningful look that said everything. This is what's expected. This is what's proper. This is what successful men do. But Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the warmth in Keisha's laugh, the way she made Lily feel safe, the genuine kindness that radiated from her like sunshine. Victoria was beautiful and accomplished and everything his world told him he should want. So why did the thought of marrying her feel like a prison sentence? The kitchen staff were having their own conversations about the new dynamic. "Did you see the way Mr. Marcus looks at that girl?" whispered the sous chef. "It's not appropriate." "She's getting ideas above her station," added the head housekeeper. "Someone needs to remind her what she is." "What she is," said the head chef with a sneer, "is the help. And the help doesn't belong in the main house, making eyes at the family." Those words hit Keisha like physical blows when she overheard them the next morning. She'd been feeling like maybe, just maybe, she belonged somewhere in this strange new world. But the staff's cruel whispers reminded her of the truth. She was just the girl from the diner, temporarily useful but ultimately disposable. The comments got worse. "Look at her, thinking she's something special. Probably thinks she's going to marry rich and escape that slum she came from. They always do, these types. Get a little attention and suddenly they forget their place." Each word was chosen to cut, and they succeeded. Keisha started pulling back emotionally, building walls around her heart to protect herself from the pain. She still came every day, still cooked for Lily, but the easy warmth was gone. She was professional, distant, careful not to overstep boundaries that had been made painfully clear. And Lily, with the instincts of a child who'd learned to read emotional weather patterns for survival, immediately sensed the change. The tension in the air, the careful distance Keisha now maintained, the way Marcus seemed distracted and conflicted. It all felt familiar and dangerous. If you're loving this emotional roller coaster and want to see how true love conquers all, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the next part will absolutely blow your mind. But here's what I need to know. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere, even when your heart was telling you that you did? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next will show us just how powerful love can be when everything seems to be falling apart. Everything was falling apart, and it started with 7 words that shattered a little girl's world. Lily heard Victoria's laugh echoing from the study. That woman will be gone soon. Once Marcus and I are married, we'll hire proper staff. Those words hit Lily like a physical blow. The woman who'd made her feel safe was going to disappear, just like everyone else always did. By dinner that night, Lily's plate sat untouched. The familiar panic had returned, that crushing fear that nothing good ever lasted. Then the call came that changed everything. "Miss Williams, your grandmother needs emergency surgery, but the cost." The number made Keisha's knees buckle. More money than she'd ever seen in her life. That same afternoon, a restaurant called. "We need a head chef in Chicago. Triple your current salary plus benefits." Triple her salary. Enough to save Grandma Rose. All she had to do was walk away from a little girl who needed her, and a man who'd made her believe in fairy tales. Meanwhile, Marcus was drowning in family pressure. "The engagement party is next month," Victoria announced. "I've already booked the country club." But Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Keisha's warmth, her kindness, the way she made everything better just by being there. He was falling in love with a woman his world told him was wrong. When Keisha didn't show up for work, Marcus knew he couldn't lose her. He found her at St. Mary's Hospital, defeated and drowning in impossible choices. "You saved my sister," he said, sitting beside her. "You brought light into our house, and now I need you to save me too." "Marcus, don't." Keisha shook her head, tears falling. "Your world, my world, they're too different. Love doesn't pay for surgery. Love doesn't make me good enough for your world." A weak voice called from the hospital bed. "Baby girl, come here." Grandma Rose pulled out a simple gold ring, worn smooth by decades of love. "This ring has been in our family for 4 generations. Don't let class keep you from happiness, baby. The only opinion that matters is your heart's." Victoria had orchestrated the perfect evening, a family dinner to announce her engagement to Marcus. The dining room was filled with the city's elite. Keisha arrived for her regular shift, only to find the house transformed. "Oh, that's just the kitchen help," Victoria was saying with a cutting laugh. "Once we're married, we'll hire proper staff. Someone who understands their place." "I heard she actually thought she had a chance with Marcus," another voice chimed in. "Can you imagine?" That's when Marcus heard the conversation that changed everything. His face went white, then red with fury. "She has more class in her little finger than everyone in this room combined," Marcus said, his voice rising. "She's kinder, braver, and more genuine than any of you could ever hope to be." The room fell silent. "Her name is Keisha," Marcus said firmly, "and she's the woman I love." A small, weak voice came from the stairway. "Keisha? Where's Keisha?" Lily appeared, thin and pale, clinging to the banister. Richard looked at his daughter and saw how fragile she'd become. Then he looked at the room full of people who cared more about appearances than about a little girl's well-being. "Victoria, it's time for you and your friends to leave," he said quietly. "My daughter needs someone who loves her, and my son deserves to marry for love, not for business." As the shocked guests filed out, Marcus found Keisha in the kitchen, holding Lily close. "I'm sorry it took me so long to stand up for what matters," he said, dropping to his knees. He pulled out a simple, beautiful ring. "Keisha Williams, you saved my sister, you saved my family, and you saved me. Will you marry me?" And there, in the kitchen where their love had grown one meal at a time, Keisha said the word that would change all their lives forever. Yes. If this story is giving you all the feels and you want to see how this incredible love story ends, smash that subscribe button because the finale will leave you in tears of joy. But tell me, do you think love really can conquer all the barriers that society puts in our way? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this next part proves that sometimes fairy tales do come true. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And there we were, back to that moment that started our incredible journey. But now you know the whole story. Now you understand why those gasps from the wealthy guests meant nothing compared to the tears of joy streaming down everyone's faces who truly mattered. Keisha stood radiant in her grandmother's wedding dress, the same dress that had been worn by 4 generations of women who chose love over society's expectations. It wasn't designer, it wasn't expensive, but it was filled with more history and heart than any couture gown money could buy. Marcus looked at her like she was his entire universe, which honestly, she was. But the most beautiful sight of all was 8-year-old Lily Chen Morrison, absolutely glowing as the flower girl. Gone was the pale, frightened child who'd barely eaten for months. This Lily was healthy, confident, beaming with the kind of joy that comes from knowing you're truly loved and safe. She scattered rose petals with the enthusiasm of someone who finally believed in happy endings, because she was living in one. Richard Morrison walked Keisha down the aisle with tears in his eyes. The powerful CEO who'd built an empire had learned that the most important deals aren't made in boardrooms, they're made in kitchens, over simple meals shared with love. Grandma Rose was too weak to attend, but her spirit was there in every step Keisha took, in every promise she was about to make. The guest list told the real story of their journey. Gone were the shallow socialites and business associates who'd mocked their love. Instead, the cathedral was filled with people who'd seen past color and class to recognize something beautiful when it appeared. The staff from Murphy's Diner sat next to genuine friends from Marcus's world, the few who had hearts instead of calculators where their emotions should be. You may kiss the bride. And when Marcus lifted Keisha's veil and kissed her with all the passion and promise of their extraordinary love story, even the most cynical hearts in that room had to believe in magic. 3 months later, the real magic was just beginning. The Morrison Industries building had been transformed in ways that quarterly reports could never capture. On the ground floor, where there used to be cold marble and intimidating security, now stood Rose's Kitchen. The restaurant Keisha had always dreamed of opening. But this wasn't just any restaurant. This was a place where love was the main ingredient in every dish. Every morning, employees would come down for breakfast, made with the same care Keisha had once shown a frightened little girl. Business meetings happened over comfort food that reminded powerful executives what really mattered. The cafeteria had become the heart of the building, where class barriers melted away over shared meals and genuine conversation. And right in the middle of it all was Lily. Now 9 years old and absolutely thriving. She'd become Keisha's sous chef, her little hands helping prepare the very foods that had once frightened her. She'd learned that cooking wasn't just about feeding bodies, it was about nourishing souls, building bridges, creating family out of strangers. "Lily, can you help me with the seasoning?" Keisha would call out, and Lily would bounce over with the confidence of someone who knew she belonged, who knew she was valued, who knew that love had finally won. Marcus would watch them from the doorway sometimes, still amazed by the transformation in his sister. Still grateful beyond words for the woman who'd saved not just Lily, but his entire family. He'd traded his cold penthouse for a warm home filled with laughter and the smell of good food and the sound of genuine happiness. Richard had learned to eat lunch in the cafeteria instead of his executive dining room, discovering that the best business insights often came from conversations with employees who felt heard and valued. The company culture had shifted from cutthroat competition to collaborative community, and somehow, profits had actually increased. Turns out, people work better when they feel like family. But the most beautiful miracle of all was growing quietly inside Keisha's belly. A new Morrison was on the way. A child who would grow up in a world where love had conquered prejudice, where family was defined by hearts, not DNA, where the color of your skin or the size of your bank account meant nothing compared to the size of your dreams. What should we name the baby? Marcus asked one evening as they stood in their kitchen, not the grand mansion kitchen where their love had grown, but the cozy home kitchen where they were building their future. Something that means hope, Keisha said, her hand resting on her growing belly. Because that's what this baby represents. Hope that the world is changing, that love really can win, that happy endings aren't just for fairy tales. Lily looked up from where she was mixing cookie batter. I think we should name the baby Love, she said with the serious consideration only a 9-year-old could muster. Because love is what made everything better. And maybe she was right. Maybe love was the answer to everything. The cure for loneliness, the bridge across differences, the magic that could transform the most broken situations into something beautiful. This story started with a little girl who wouldn't eat, and a woman who cooked with love. It grew into something bigger. A love story that proved that when you lead with your heart instead of your prejudices, when you choose compassion over convention, when you believe that people matter more than profit, miracles can happen. Keisha Williams had dreamed of opening a restaurant where she could serve her grandmother's recipes. She got that and so much more. A family, a love story for the ages, and the knowledge that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are found when you're brave enough to leave the path everyone expects you to follow. Richard Morrison had wanted to save his daughter. He'd ended up saving his soul. Marcus Morrison had been looking for someone to help his sister eat. He'd found the woman who would teach him how to truly live. And Lily Chen Morrison? She'd learned the most important lesson of all, that love doesn't abandon you, that family is stronger than fear, and that sometimes the people who seem the most different from you are exactly the ones who understand you best. Because in the end, love really does see no color, no class, no barriers, only the human heart and its infinite capacity for connection, compassion, and hope. If this incredible love story touched your heart and reminded you that miracles can happen when we choose love over prejudice, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to believe in happy endings. And here's my final question for you. In a world that often tries to divide us, what's one way you can choose love over judgment in your own life? Let me know in the comments, because every small act of love makes the world a little more like Keisha and Marcus's fairy tale come true.